For the longest time, the kart racing genre has become an easy to access style of game thanks most in part to its way of catering to both casual and competitive gamers. But to say that one franchise has been overshadowing the competition would be an understatement. However, towards the end of the 90s and to some extent the early 2000s, there was some competition for the denim wearing plumber. Crash Team Racing is one of the rare few PS1 games that many of us can confidently say still holds up to this day. And why not? Its controls are still tight thanks most in parts to its drifting and boosting mechanics, with neatly constructed tracks that not only pay homage to the Bandicoot's past adventures, but also expand on the kooky, colourful world as well. Even its sequels, well okay, one of its sequels, still managed to bring out an equal amount of fun and even ended up getting ahead of the curve in regards to their gravity-defying tracks. Of all the remaked games Activision has been making, these seem like the ones you'd probably need to improve upon the least. But with Nitro-Fueled out, one has to ask, which tracks come in dead last and which ones take home the cup, as we look at the worst to best tracks from Crash Team Racing Nitro-Fueled. As for my list on the Spyro Reignited trilogy, this is all subjected to my own opinion, which I'm always welcome to be critiqued, so long as it's creative criticism. And honestly, I'm intrigued as to what's going to be this list's ice cavern. Like last time, this will neither be based on the original tracks from Crash Team Racing and Crash Nitro Kart, but on the revamped ones made for Nitro-Fueled. Which certainly isn't an easy task this time, as in order to likely keep the driving mechanics consistent for both games, the anti-gravity tracks were altered in various ways, for better or for worse. Our missions are a lot more clear and cut, with the only exclusions being the battle arenas and the added PlayStation track that I kinda just felt like leaving out. In the end, we are left with 18 from the original Crash Team Racing and 13 from Crash Nitro-Fueled, landing us with a reasonable 31 tracks to talk about. And yes, I'm aware of the future post-launch tracks headed our way, but I couldn't exactly hold off this video that I've been planning for months until all of them are out. But I'll say this, if there are plans to put out a decent amount later down the line, there's a chance I'll find some way to address them all in a future video. And with all that said, let's kick things off with number 31, Dragon Mines. Normally when I write these things out, I list out all the positives that come to mind and do what I can to find the more negative side to them. But boy did the tables turn here. While I do have a soft spot for levels centered around mines or the like, this one just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. The narrowness of it all really gets in the way, the final stretch has next to no tension, but its greatest sin is the final ascending spiral ramp that just ends up breaking what streak you have. Personally, I feel like avoiding this one almost every time. Number 30, Thunder. Na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Struck. This track, while certainly not impossible, does demand a lot. The constant quick turns are problem enough, but the addition of these spinning logs will ruin your run too many times. On top of there being a lot of them, they give you barely an opening to slip under them due to their speed, along with them taking up a good portion of the track, leaving you feeling very frustrated when it's all done. Number 29, Dingo Canyon. What happened to you, Dingo Canyon? You used to be so much better in my head. A lot of my problems come from the fact that it's just way too narrow most of the time, meaning that most of your success is likely to come from what lucky item you get rather than how you maneuver around the track. Maybe the reason why I remember this one so well was just simply due to the Outback-like setting, but I can certainly say now that reason alone does not save it here. Number 28, Inferno Islands. Many who play this, I'm sure, do a double take afterwards when they start to notice the jarring similarities this level has with Crash Cove. From the Palm Island setting, to the shape and layout of the track, to even having a rather superfluous ramp towards the end. I'm glad at the very least the devs were aware of this and made changes like the time of day and even having lava about, but in the end, I prefer the original. No, not that original one. Number 27, Oxide Station. For many, this track is a splinter in the mind thanks to the shit many of us had to go through with Oxide and all, but as a track against 7 other racers, it can feel a little too stretched out with very few parts to shake it up. There is, to be fair, a pretty neat point where we get to race with the gravity weakened for a moment, but it only happens once and I can't help but wish that more of the track was like this so as to cut things up better. Number 26, Coco Park. While I'll admit this level sure is pretty, man oh man is it way too tame. The wide open space it provides is different in that it allows you to use your drifting skills to get a leg up on everyone, but sadly it fails to excite in the same way others can. It's certainly not bad, it's just that it ends up coming off as a track that I find best demonstrates the real beauty that the game is capable of, and that's about it. Number 25, Turbo Track. I'm not gonna lie, I was ready to throw this and slide Colosseum in the low tier simply for their rather basic locations, but after really digging into them, I looked more at their track designs and came to appreciate them for the challenge they provide. Turbo Track, as its name suggests, is based almost all around hitting as many speed boosters as possible, which is all well and good, but may I ask why we have to have 3 hard turns right in the middle that even with a high turn rate character brake turning can feel impossible to keep a momentum going. Maybe that was their intention, but it just doesn't work for for me. Number 24, Hyperspace Way. This is going to be the hardest to talk about, as out of all the tracks, this one has not just had segments altered, but entire sections just cut out due to the aforementioned anti-gravity mechanics being removed. Thus, the track best known for being the CTR series' longest now feels a little too much like everything else. While this change shouldn't affect my personal ranking, there is still a feeling of it missing stuff, as it's meant to be a 3-part driving gauntlet. With that said, it's still good here and there with 1 or 2 challenging moments, but it just misses something to make it that epic track it's trying to be. Number 23, Clockwork Wolverine. I'll say this track has a lovely aesthetic to it, what with all the gears, clocks, bells and okay, no whistles, but you get my point. The way in which they utilise these into the track is commendable, especially with the shortcut here. Unfortunately, the sharp turns prove to be a bit of an annoyance on a very cramped track. Number 22, Android Alley. If the whole track here was as good as its first half, I'd probably grade it something like a B. Sadly, its second half just ends up losing its steam afterwards. The ramped walls and the trains are a neat introduction to start us off, and I do like the layer dropping turn despite its sharp edge that you need to avoid. But then it's just a rather casual drive to the end with one of the easiest shortcuts to exploit. Plus the final bend at the end just feels climacticless. Number 21, Tiny Temple. This one fits in with that middle group lot, with their being plenty to enjoy. It's just there's not much that can really be said apart from it plays out well and has some decent turns and jumps. There's going to be a thing, right? Like there's always one entry in the middle that I have so little say about, except it's aight. Number 20, Engine Labs. While this level certainly has some rough turns along with plenty of sharp edges for you to easily fall off, I end up liking this track for the most part, even though it feels like it constantly screws you over at points. Number 19, Jungle Boogie. Looking over this track, I get the feeling they were trying to make an updated Rouge tube, but with more jumps involved. However, due to how narrow they make certain parts at the beginning, it sadly doesn't match up as well in my opinion. Number 18, Hot Air Skyway. The Rainbow Row, the Crash series. To be honest, outside of occasionally falling off due to an enemy's item, I've had very little issue with this track's difficulty. It's unfortunate that this is a track that falls into that group of ones that go on for maybe a bit too long while looking too much the same, but I can't deny how eye-catching it all is, and there is some great moments throughout. Number 17, Barren Ruins. There's a good balance to this track in how it cuts things off, and I like the combination of both the temple setting and the forgotten ancient alien species-like vibe you get with all the machinery and pipes lying about. My only real gripe is with the boulder needing to be triggered and not just one of those dare to boost obstacles like an Engine Labs. Also, these robots are just pants easy to avoid. Number 16, Tiny Arena. This is a hard one to figure out. On the one hand, it relies almost entirely on how well you are able to work with the slopes and landing boosts, along with plenty of turns to boot. Then again, it's definitely a track that you can't memorize much of due to it looking pretty much the same all throughout, and by the third lap, you're kinda just waiting for it to be over. Number 15, Crash Cove. For many this is a very default track, and I can understand why. It's got a good bit of open space, enough easy turns and boosters to get you to familiarise with the mechanics, and just has an all-around easygoing atmosphere about it. Number 14, Out of Time. It's impossible to talk about this track and not bring up the elephant in the room. The giant clock that features in the original Nitro car is altered in this version to have you simply drifting inside the clock as opposed to around its face high up. I bring this up because I feel that, had this been kept in, this likely would have set it much higher for sheer spectacle alone. With that said, I think it's still a competent track that is still visually pleasing. Number 13, Mystery Caves. While this track may not be the fastest or hardest, it does help in showing the importance of using landing boosters, plus the stretch in the middle with the fireballs is still one of the most epic moments in the entire CTR series. Number 12, Meteor Gorge. Let me start by thanking the developers for at least attempting to differentiate this track from Blizzard Bluff and Polar Pass. After all, what's more awkward than 2 tracks sharing the same theme than, well, 3 tracks sharing the same theme? As for its design, I think it's alright, it plays great, it's just that I can't think of much else to talk about except how the triggered ramps seem a little tacked on. Number 11, Cortex Castle. A guilty pleasure pick to say the least, as I'm a huge sucker for the location and its music. This is another that, thanks to its sharp right angle turns, it can be rather difficult in certain spots, but in the end I still enjoy it for the memorable ride it still provides. Number 10, Slide Colosseum. Unlike TurboTrack, I feel like this one managed to keep a consistent focus on the subject, and hot damn does it manage to go all the way. The thrill of drifting is certainly at some of its best here, providing a race that feels as skill-based as it can get. Number 9, Blizzard Bluff. I was honestly ready to tear into this one just from remembering its sheer artistic simplicity, but after really going at it, I started to see the real joy that one can have on this track, with it working out as a good pick for both new and pro players alike. Number 8. Assembly Lane. Most people tend to draw a comparison between this track and Engine Lab, but honestly, considering the amount of hills to take advantage of, I'd say it had more in common with Tiny's Arena. In fact, it might even be better. Oh wait, I already mentioned Tiny Arena. Well, I guess that ends that in a debate. Number 7. Electron Avenue. A part of me says that the reason this is so high up is purely due to the gorgeous 80s neon coating used here, but it proves to be a fast, rather intimidating track thanks to the many sharp turns and laser walls needing to be dodged. I also like the idea of you jumping off at the very start and then climbing your way back up. Small note, I highly recommend playing some 80s synth music in the background to fully complete the immersion. Number 6. Papu's Pyramid. This is one that I'm sure has collectively remained in the minds of many over the years. While avoiding the plants and risking it on a shortcut are hard enough, the real make or break moments are with the climb up the temple that requires a decent level of precision to make it up in one clean sweep. Number 5. Sewer Speedway. This one takes the half-pipe elements we've seen in other tracks, but works out for the best thanks most in part to its layout, along with its way of having to use your combined turning and jumps to help cut corners. The only complaint I can think of is that final 2 holes you have to steer through that have resulted in some rather unpleasant ways to end out on. Number 4. Deep Sea Driving. Hey, what do you know, a Nitro Kart track that resembles an original CTR one in theme only. Despite the fact this is another on the list of altered for the sake of not including anti-gravity mechanics, it thankfully still manages to come out with its head held high, and maybe even better because of it. The boost of speed that you can retain from the sea creature all the way to the end of the tube is, well, simply electric. Number 3. Rouge Tubes. These final 3 were certainly not easy to place, as they all could have made the top spot in my opinion. While this track may have a rather basic layout to it, it manages to be the go-to track for those who need to learn how to be one with the drifting mechanics. There's a great flow to how you freely aim and time your turns. It's a perfect example of the game itself, easy for newcomers to pick up, but grueling when you need to calculate the best outcome. Number 2. Tiger Temple. This track succeeds most in part to its precise inclusion of jumping, allowing for plenty of boosting throughout, yet it knows when to cut things up, with the tunnel helping to shake things up thanks to its narrowness and flaming idle heads. Its shortcut might be considered too much of an exploit, but I can't get over the rush of energy this track just provides. And finally, number 1. Polar Pass. This track, people, oh, this track. If the kart is my instrument, then this track is my showstopper. It's one that provides an easy to follow 3-part act, each special in their own. It's challenging but never frustrating. It's eye-catching but never distracting. It's a track that I'm happy to replay whatever the outcome beforehand. I just feel so alive whenever I go round that double roundabout, or hop over the wall, or finish a race with an epic landing boost. It all just comes together as this game's very best. And there we have it, guys. Not gonna lie, this proved to be a lot harder to judge this time around, and even harder to talk about without repeating myself and just resorting to how it looked artistically. As always, I'm interested to hear which picks you think got robbed and which ones got way too much praise. But before we head off, I'd just like to pass along something. Given my, and possibly your, affinity for these worst to best videos, I've been greatly considering turning them into a regular thing on this channel. I've already drawn up a few potential game series that I feel are worth exploring, some of which I even plan to look at other areas in video games like characters, weapons and bosses and so on. Thankfully, I've already gotten a leg up on my next topic, which I can confirm will be the worst to best Sly Cooper episodes. If this sounds like your kind of thing, then there is an easy way to let me know, and that is by possibly subscribing and or liking this video. With any luck, and of course your continued support, I hope this can help lead to new opportunities for both entertaining and somewhat educational content down the line. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, till next time.